7 Secrets of the Goddess by Devdutt Pattanaik. Chapter 2. Kali's Secret. Nature is indifferent to human gaze. Part 2. It often becomes difficult to distinguish Kali from Kali-like goddesses in Puranic and Tantric literature. They seem to belong to a single continuum. Bhairavi is often linked to Kali, but while Kali is shown standing or sitting on Shiva, Bhairavi and Shiva are seen as a pair, either located in crematoriums or wandering in the wilderness. Shiva is called Bhairav. As a pair, they invoke violence, sexuality, and an indifference to social disapproval. Their images are also found on Jain temple walls, indicating their popularity. Down south, Bhairav is often shown holding a human head. It is said to be the head of Brahma, who dared seek to sexually dominate Bhairavi. In some tales, this head cannot be placed on the ground, and so Bhairav and Bhairavi take turns holding it. When they grow tired and place it on the ground, the world comes to an end. Chinnamastika means one whose head has been severed. She severs her own neck, and her detached head drinks the blood spurting out of the neck. Thus she kills and nourishes herself, embodying that aspect of nature where the prey is killed to feed the predator. Thus in nature, violence becomes nourishment and contributes to survival. She also sits on Kama and Rati, god and goddess of desire, as they are copulating. Here, the woman is always on top of the man, indicating she is not the passive partner but the active one, initiating the sexual act, not simply the recipient of male passion. Here, the sexual act is about procreation, not so much about pleasure, to keep rotating the cycle of life. Thus in nature, sex becomes procreative and contributes to survival. Tara is indistinguishable from Kali, though they are named separately in Tantric literature. She is both a Buddhist and a Brahmin goddess. Tara of Buddhism invokes compassion in Buddha and transforms him into Bodhisattva, who delays his own liberation to help people out of the ocean of suffering. Likewise, Tara of Hinduism invokes compassion in Shiva and transforms him into a caring householder. In Bengal and Orissa, some distinguish Tara as the milder, more approachable form of Kali, one who need not be feared, one who can be invoked not only by hermits but also by householders. Chamunda is distinguished from Kali by her gaunt form. She is emaciated, sits on a corpse or a pile of corpses, and has a scorpion for her belly button. This form seems to embody decay and drought. She is associated with dogs feeding on corpses either in the aftermath of a battle or an epidemic. She evokes despair and suffering. As temples were built to enshrine Shiva, Vishnu and Devi, it became crucial to establish relationships between the 3 major deities of Hinduism. Shiva's ascetic nature connected him to the wild forms of Kali. If she was nature that is indifferent to the mind, Prakriti, he embodied the mind that is independent of nature, Purush. In the more masculine Shaiva literature, nature is seen as passive, even subservient. Shiva enables the domestication of Kali on the request of Brahma and the other devas. Thus we have stories of how Shiva competes with Kali in a dance competition, only to triumph over her by taking up positions that Kali is too embarrassed to assume. There are also stories where, by taking the form of a beautiful man or a cute child, Shiva is able to blind Kali by evoking marital and maternal desires in her. In this literature, the other does not exist. Nature, in particular, and all other living creatures in general, are but objects around the subject. Everybody and everything needs to be controlled. But in the more feminine Shakta literatures, nature is active. Kali wants Shiva to pay attention to her for the benefit of humanity. Indifferent, he is no different from a corpse or shav. In the less subtle tantric imagery, Kali does not merely step on Shiva, she sits on top of him, intent on copulating with him. Only by engaging with her does he turn into Shiva, the auspicious one. Kali sits on top of Shiva and gently coaxes him to make love to her, acknowledge her desires, and satisfy her. She refuses to be invisible. This literature evokes the consciousness of man, the human ability to be sensitive and caring, the human ability to pay attention to the other. Here, nature is also a subject, as are others around the subject. Everybody and everything has a soul that needs to be respected. Both Shaiva and Shakta literature tell the tale of how sages stumble upon Shiva and Shakti when they are making love. There are two versions of what follows. In one version, the goddess is shy, so she covers her face with a lotus flower. Shiva does not stop, and so the rishis declare that Shiva would be worshipped only as a symbol, never in human form. This story explains the name Lajja Gauri, or shy consort of Shiva, given by male archaeologists to the clay image of the goddess found in fields across India, where she is spread-eagled as if ready to receive a lover or deliver a child, and with a lotus for a face. It also explains why Shiva is worshipped as an erect stone, linga or phallus, in a leaf-shaped trough, yoni or womb, and rarely in human form. In the other version, the goddess is not shy. She simply sticks out her tongue, either in defiance of their disapproval or in jest, amused that they seek to judge nature. For she is nature, unaffected by human opinions. Here, Kali's tongue is a symbol that mocks the limitations as well as the assumptions of the human gaze. It reminds us that nature is sovereign. In nature, sex and violence ensure survival of the fittest. Human gaze judges sex and violence in ethical, moral, and aesthetic terms. Be that as it may, humans have no choice but to submit to sex and violence in order to survive. These two versions depict the conflicting attitudes towards sexuality that emerged in the post-Buddhist period, which saw the rising influence of monastic orders. In a similar vein, one finds, especially in Bengal, two forms of Kali. One in which she steps on Shiva with her left foot and raises a sickle in her right hand, and another where she steps on him with her right foot and raises her sickle with her left hand. The first one is seen as more fearsome and is called Smashan Kali, Kali of the crematorium. The second one is seen as more considerate of cultural norms and is called Bhadra Kali, Kali who is modest. The latter Kali was also called Tara, linking her to the compassionate Buddhist goddess. Smashan Kali is nature that ultimately consumes humanity. Bhadra Kali is nature that is understanding of human shortcomings. Smashan Kali is wild and free beyond domestication. Bhadra Kali offers the strength to cope with the limitations of a domesticated life. In Kali Kula Tantra, or tantric worship revolving around Kali, the point of eroticism was not indulgence or subversion, but a desire to confront one's deepest fears. It demanded that the aspirant break free from the social structures, customs, and beliefs that offered him security. If he succeeded in doing so, he became Veera, a hero. Confrontation with fears jolted the Veera into wisdom. An encounter with Kali transformed a fool into one of India's greatest poets, Kalidas, servant of Kali, who lived around the 5th century AD at the time of the Gupta kings, wrote extensively on unfettered love and longing in a world restrained by rules and hierarchies. Such a confrontation could also transform the Veera into a Rasa Siddha, he who knows the mysteries of alchemy. That is why Kali was also a venerated deity in the Nath Sampradaya, a monastic order which originated around the 10th century and was made up of wandering yogis who revered wise and powerful gurus such as Matsyendranath and Gorakhnath. Similarly, legend has it that Krishna Devaraya of the 16th century Vijayanagar Empire had a court jester called Tenali Raman, who acquired his wisdom because he was amused rather than intimidated by the vision of Kali. Since Kali was connected with Shiva, she could not be associated with Shiva's rival deity, Vishnu. The Bhagavad Puran tells the story where Vishnu, in the form of Krishna, fights a Kali-like goddess while she is defending Shiva's devotee, Bana, whose daughter, Usha, falls in love with and abducts Krishna's handsome grandson, Anirudh. And yet, the character most intimately associated with Vishnu's most popular avatar, Krishna, has all the characteristics of Kali. Not in form though, but in thought. Her name was Radha. From the 12th century onwards, Radha makes her appearance in the Hindu imagination in Prakrit works. But her popularity is traced to the 13th century Sanskrit work Gita Govinda, which describes in intimate detail her nocturnal and clandestine erotic dalliance with Krishna. The idea of gopis or milkmaids swooning over Krishna, leaving their homes in the dead of night and dancing around him to the tune of his music in the middle of the woods on the banks of the river, was known before the arrival of Radha. In the Bhagavad Puran, dated to the 12th century, there is no mention of Radha. But the Ras Leela is described to evoke various moods such as bhakti or devotion, shringar or eroticism, madhurya or tenderness, and viraha or longing created by separation. When Radha appears, a new flavor emerges. Unlike the gopis, who are subservient and even admonished for being possessive, Radha is demanding. She quarrels with Krishna, and Krishna tries hard to appease her, even wearing her clothes sometimes or falling at her feet. Unlike the self-contained hero of earlier works, he is distraught in Radha's absence. When duty beckons and Krishna has to leave the village of Vrindavan and go to the city of Mathura, the gopis weep, but not Radha. Krishna promises that he will return, but Radha knows he will not. When Krishna does not return and sends Uddhava to pacify the heartbroken milkmaids, Radha admonishes him for offering intellectual remedies for their emotional despair. She demands the right to feel frustrated and angry, but she does not begrudge her Krishna. She does not expect him to return. She describes him as a honeybee whose nature it is to go from flower to flower, but she, the flower attached to the branch of the tree, has nowhere to go but yearn for him and languish in memories and unfulfilled dreams and find validation therein. Thus she becomes the embodiment of true, unconditional, immersive love. Later poets such as Vidyapati and Chandidas highlighted the scandalous nature of Radha's relationship with Krishna. She is described as a married woman in some songs, a woman who is older than Krishna in others, and in some oral traditions, his aunt, wife of Yashoda's brother. This makes the relationship extramarital, intergenerational, and incestuous, breaking all boundaries imposed by society. This grants the nature of the relationship a very tantric theme. Not everyone was pleased with such breaking of boundaries. There were fierce arguments whether Radha was Parakya, belonging to another, or Svakya, belonging to Krishna. The folk traditions and regional literature were comfortable with the idea that Radha was married to another man, but in later Purans like Brahma Vaivarta, concerted efforts are made to show how Radha and Krishna are two halves of the primal being, married in heaven but separated on earth. It reveals the discomfort with all things tantric commonly seen in mainstream society, and points to Radha alluding to Kali, despite being fully clothed. It is interesting to note that Radha as an idea emerges after the arrival of Islam, which has been identified as the reason why Indian women, especially in the northern part of the subcontinent, started using the veil. Temples depicting tantric iconography were torn down to cater to the increasingly conservative mindset. Yet, Radha emerges, defying convention from behind the veil, leaving the inner courtyard to be with Krishna in the forest, located beyond the influence of structures and hierarchies of the village. The idea of Radha flourished primarily in the Gangetic plains, but it arose in the eastern areas of Orissa, Bengal, and Assam, which were prominent centers of Tantra and Kali worship. Jayadev, who wrote the Gita Govinda, lived near the Jagannath temple in Puri, Orissa, renowned for its temple dancers who were unattached to any man and were dedicated to the temple. Later, Radha's fierce love for Krishna would feature prominently in the devotional movement of Chaitanya, to the extent that even men started identifying themselves with Radha, considering Krishna to be the only true, complete and perfect man. The psychological intensity of the romance was not mirrored physically. In fact, both the Chaitanya of Bengal and Shankar Dev of Assam would celebrate continence and celibacy arising from true love for Krishna. Thus, the overtly tantric traditions were tempered. Yet, the idea of Kali, who is indifferent to social conventions, survived in the mind. By the 15th century, the Ramayans and Mahabharats, written in regional languages, started associating their wronged heroines, Sita and Draupadi, with Kali. In the Adbhut Ramayana, while Ram kills Ravan who has 10 heads, Sita is able to kill a Ravan who has 100 heads. In the Tamil Mahabharata, Draupadi transforms into Kali at night, running naked in the forest, eating elephants and buffaloes, as she is disappointed with her husbands, the 5 Pandavas. It is this Kali side of Draupadi that makes her take the vow that she will wash her hair with the blood of the men who abused her. In fact, in these traditions, the story goes that Vishnu takes his various avatars such as Parshuram, Ram and Krishna only to satisfy the bloodlust of Kali, who wants to drink the blood of men who treat her with disrespect. Chapter 2. Kali's Secret. Nature is indifferent to human gaze. Part 1. Chapter 2. Kali's Secret. Nature is indifferent to human gaze. Part 3.